Hey guys, Jet888 here, July 22nd. Just want to run over some real quick thoughts regarding the technologies that have come out that we've been so exposed to. We have natural frequencies that just do not work with these high-tech EMF frequencies. They're just not part of nature at all. So I'm just going to show some really quick stats. So in 1992, it says the crude death rate in the United States was 852.9 deaths per 100,000 population. So when they do an age-adjusted death rate, so it kind of accounts for the age population, which is more accurate, they saw it to be about 504.5 deaths per 100,000 population. So remember that number, 504.5 deaths per 100,000. This was the lowest age-adjusted death rate ever recorded at the time. So it seemed like we were getting healthier. Looking at 1993, and I know these aren't all encompassing, but it's a quick look into this. So the most impactful new technology was the Mosaic web browser, released by National Center for Supercomputing Applications, NCSA. So this says, this was the first graphical browser that allowed users to easily access and navigate the World Wide Web, making it accessible to a wider audience. Additionally, CERN made the World Wide Web software publicly available in 1993, further fueling its growth. So what happened in 1993, I wonder? In 1993, the crude death rate in the United States was 880 deaths per 100,000 population. So that increased from the 1992 crude population. So 1993, that represents a 3% increase of deaths from 1992. The age-adjusted death rate was 513 deaths per 100,000 population. That's a 1.7% increase from the previous year, according to the CDC. So if you look at the technology that was introduced, and our bodies being electric fields probably couldn't deal with all of that EMF. When I look at quick anagrams, Mosaic is coma, Mosaic web browser is so boa microbrews, NCSA, the National Center for Supercomputing Applications, is also scan. So in 1990 we go from 746 per 100,000 population deaths. 1992, we go to the 852.9 deaths per 100,000 population. We introduced the web, and in 1993, that represents a 3% increase of deaths from 1992. That's a pretty interesting jump. Then in 1994, there's 875.4 deaths per 100,000 population. So that was slightly lower than the crude death rate of the year before, 1993. So the body takes a while to adjust. So it looks like in 1994 it adjusted a little bit, or everyone who's going to die died from the new technology that was introduced. So if you just look at the jump of increase in deaths between 1990 and 1994, that's quite significant. And what was introduced? The Mosaic web browser, CERN, and the World Wide Web being more accessible to a wider audience. Then in 1995, there are 2,312,000 plus deaths registered in the United States. The crude death rate was 880 deaths per 100,000 population. This was a slightly higher than the previous year's rate of 875.4 per thousand. So what new technology in 1995 occurred? 1995, technology saw significant advancements, particularly with the rise of the internet and debut of Windows 95. Who was responsible, or the name known and attached to Windows? And that's right, Bill Gates is the name most associated with Windows 95. In its release August 24th, 1995, Bill Gates is the name most famously attached to it, as he was the co-founder. Windows. There's that logo. Look at an anagram for Microsoft. It's Fisk Motor. Look at the word Fisk. Roman history, the public treasury of Rome, or the emperor's privy purse. Merriam-Webster says the meaning of Fisk is a state or royal treasury. That's interesting. And look at an anagram for Microsoft Windows. It's conformist widow, or conformist widows. And the word conformist, a person who conforms to accepted behavior or established practices. To conform here, comply with rules, standards, or laws. So comply. So 1995 had the rise of the internet and the debut of Windows 95, which there was a slightly higher increase in deaths. In 1996, a total of 2,314,690 deaths were registered in the United States. This was a record number of deaths at the time, slightly higher than the previous recorded number of deaths, over 2 million. So even though it was high, it seems like the people adjusted a little bit. After everyone who died was going to die, then they adjust. So 1996 shows a record number of deaths. And in 1996, several significant technologies emerged, including the first Palm Pilot, PDA, the USB interface, and the first versions of Adobe Flash. So I asked if the Palm Pilot emits EMFs. Yes, Palm Pilot PDAs, like most electronic devices, do emit electromagnetic fields. So you either, what they say, adapt or die. So there's your anagram, radiated op, as in operation. So jumping up to 2017, a total of 2,813 over, deaths were registered in the United States. This was an increase of 69,255 deaths compared to 2016. Age-related deaths increased by 0.4% from 2016, and the life expectancy of birth decreased by 0.1 year. So now we have 731.9 deaths per 100,000. In 2017, several new emerging technologies gained significant traction. Artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, alongside with continued growth of the Internet of Things. There's your IoT and blockchain technology. And the autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars, continue to be developed. So there's your Tesla. So weird look in 1994 is basically the age-related deaths was 507.4 per 100,000 standard population. So declining in deaths for individuals under 15 and over 55, but the deaths increased for the age group 35 to age 44. Like you would think the healthier, strongest people in the society. So now we go to 2018, a total of 2,839,000 plus residents' deaths. So age-related deaths. So for the population, decreased 1.1%, the death rate. So it's 723.6 deaths. So then at the end of 2018, 5G was first introduced to the United States in December 2018, when AT&T launched a mobile 5G network in a dozen cities. This marked the beginning of 5G deployment in the US, with other major carriers like Verizon, T-Mobile following in 2019. So in 2020, data from the National Vital Statistics System, age-related deaths, increased by 16.8%, going from 715.2 deaths per 100,000 in 2019 to 835.4 in 2020. So what did we have introduced at the end of 2019? We had several new technologies. There's your 5G networks, bioplastics, social robots, and we had the smart home technology. Smart speakers, smart appliances, and other connected devices became more prevalent, offering convenience, automation, and energy efficiency. Smart home technology. So I asked, does smart home technology increase the electromagnetic frequencies? Yes, smart home technology can increase electromagnetic frequencies. There's your EMFs. But within safety limits. So what's the safe limit of a frequency that your body is not used to? And simultaneously can lead to a noticeable increase in overall EMF exposure. That is not good for the human body or any living body. Just a little scale. Here's your remote controls, Wi-Fi, smart meters, radio, mobile phone, microwave. So here's just a quick look. Human body frequencies, a resonant frequency, and it says to be around 5 hertz, while another indirect method indicated it could be closer to 10 hertz. So I'm not going to look at an indirect method. I'm going to look at the direct method, and that was 5 hertz. This also says the sensitive range for vertical whole body vibration is 6 hertz to 8 hertz. Electrical signals, neural activity in the brain primarily occurs in the kilohertz range. 1 kilohertz, the heart beats at approximately 1 hertz. So here we are. See on the very left of the screen, here's your hertz, your 1 hertz. Here it basically says that 5 hertz, half of that, 5 hertz is the human body. Now look what we're doing to it. Here's your computer. We saw the rate of death increase with the Microsoft, the internet exposure. Here we've got our mobile phones, radio, smart meters, Wi-Fi. When did all this problem really start happening with all these deaths and supposed viruses, which means poisons? So December 2020, December 14th, 2020, so the end of December, the first needlecraft dose was administered to a Sandra Lindsay of Queens, New York. So when I was asking all these questions, it was interesting because they seemed to really easily, come up. The statistics and stuff were shown very easily. And for some reason, suddenly in 2021, their whole, the way they explain things comes up pretty differently. So it's 879.7 deaths in 2021 for every 100,000. So for a population of 331.9 million people in 2021, that's in 1 year, 3,464,231 people died, million people died. So if you look at those infamous years between 1933 and 1945, and there were 6 million European Jews allegedly murdered, that would be 500,000 per year versus the 3,464,231 million that died in the United States. And that's after the December 2020 needlecraft. So just sort of interesting how it shot up 5.3% death rate increased in 1 year after the needlecraft in December 2020. Look at 2024. There was an estimated 3 million deaths in the United States with the death rate. Now we're up to 922.9 deaths per 100,000 population. I mean, see how it creeps up on you? But if you look at from 1 year and you make a jump, 922.9. Now when you look at the dates to the left, 1990, 1994 to 2024, and you look at the deaths per 100,000, are you thinking and our technology is getting stronger and stronger? Adapt or die, radiated up. Do you think we're adjusting to these frequencies or not? And why isn't something being said about this? It's a slow genocide. Anyhow, just looking at Windows and looking at the anagram, the one on top, New World Order Wi-Fi dock storms, or storms dock, or docks storm. So the whole Wi-Fi thing to me is what's killing us. All these frequencies out in the open. It's the whole alphabet soup. They're all in it together. So there's some foods to help and some plants to help with the radiation exposure that we're getting. So I was going to share a couple of these. Carrots is one. I don't know if it's from the beta carotene or from some other flavonoids it has. I'm not sure. Here's peppermint. This is actually chocolate, the chocolate peppermint. This peppermint is probably one of the highest ORAC values, the highest antioxidant protective plants that you can consume. So, and this is called the chocolate peppermint. So I would recommend maybe some peppermint for once we get so much exposure from our phones and stuff. It'll help a little bit of radio protective properties. Here's some ginger. Well, this is the ginger plant. That's radio protective. There's some ginger growing. Here's a little baby ginger right here. I've got my pig in the background. If you're not growing it, you can get the real root or the ginger powder. Super good for your stomach. This is also an adaptogen. Ginger is. Mr. Pig just wanted to say hi. Hi, baby. Here's ginger. So if you have an area that's warm, it's easy to grow. And here's rosemary also. Rosemary is really good for the heart, but it's also radio protective. This is a young plant, but you can again buy it at the store, herbal, just in the spice area. The herb gotu kola is also beneficial. I'm not growing it right now though. And the mustard greens are also good for radio protective properties. They've got a lot of choices there. So I just showed you some things that can help your body deal with the oxidative stress that will happen if you're exposed to the radiation from our phones and the Wi-Fi and stuff. So radio protective refers to the ability of a substance to protect living tissue from the harmful effects of radiation. So that would behoove you with all the radiation soup that we're dealing with to expose yourself to some of those plants I just mentioned. Okay guys, go forth and take down the beast.